sketch the graph of f of x equals absolute value of x minus 2. Okay, so first thing we note here is that this is based on the absolute value graph, right? So let's just draw that one first, and then we'll see how the absolute value of x minus 2, okay, is transformed from the more basic absolute value graph, okay? So, I mean, we can draw this, or we should be able to draw this, right? But let's just make a table just to plot some points here, okay? So when x is 0, the absolute value of 0 is 0. When x is 1, the absolute value of 1 is 1. When x is 2, the absolute value of 2 is 2, so on and so forth. Okay, well, what about for negative values of x? Okay, so if x is negative 1, the absolute value of negative 1 is 1. And when x is negative 2, the absolute value of negative 2 is 2. Right, so what is this graph going to look like? Okay, so we're going to get pretty much this little V shape here. Okay? And this is what is called the basic absolute value graph. Okay, so we see 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, so on and so forth. Okay, but then this is the function that's given here, right? We want to sketch this guy, which is the absolute value of x minus 2. Okay, so let's try to think. What will this minus 2 do to the graph, right? How is it going to shift? Okay. All right, so let's plug in some values, right? Let's plug in 0. When we plug in 0, notice what we get. When x is 0, we get 0 minus 2, but the absolute value of negative 2 is positive 2. When x is 1, 1 minus 2 is negative 1, but the absolute value of negative 1 is 1. Notice here what happens if we plug a 2 in here, right? When we plug in a 2, 2 minus 2 is 0. Okay, and that's sort of what we want, right? We sort of want to determine where the y value is equal to 0. And when x is equal to 3, 3 minus 2 is 1. Okay, and let's just do one negative value, right? Negative 1 minus 2 is negative 3. The absolute value of negative 3 is just 3. Okay. So let's plot these 5 points here, right? We got negative 1, 3. We got 0, 2. We got 1, 1. 2, 0. 3, 1. Okay. So what's happening to this particular graph? Okay. And if we compare the blue graph, which is just absolute value of x, okay, and compare that to the red graph, which is the absolute value of x minus 2, right? What can we say has happened? And we can say that this has shifted to the right 2 units. Okay. Couple things to note, right? The minus 2 is essentially inside the absolute value. So what I mean by that is we don't have something like this. Okay? If the minus 2 was outside the absolute value, this would be a vertical shift. Okay? But because the 2 is inside, this would be a horizontal shift because we're transforming the x values, right? Yeah. But also, this minus 2 doesn't mean that we shift to the left 2 units to the negative side. Okay? Essentially, this means that we have to make up for that. Okay, by making x a positive 2. Okay, so this graph is going to be a horizontal shift to the right of 2 units.